So there are no questions in the tablet yet. I'm here to receive your questions. So I'll get started with the question. So something I'm feeling at work after OpenAI launched all these awesome models is that something that previously took me like 1 month to prototype now takes me 1 day. And just a few hours ago, I was testing Street View images with GPT-4's new vision feature, and it was telling me things I didn't even notice in the images. So how do you see these new LLM models being used for creating faster softwares and with less resources, with less human time for these less tech-savvy audiences?
So one of the things I was doing, so I was playing around with MakerSuit. It's a Google product, so they use it to kind of like prototype LLMs. So what I did was actually built a gynecological pre-screening tool for women. So for example, normally, when you cross like the 40s, you need a woman needs to do checkups every 6 months.
Yeah.
And usually women slack off because they need to get to the doctor, or sometimes it's because of expenses, especially in low resources countries. So, and it was really very helpful. Obviously I leveraged the LLMs and just asked it, guide this a little bit so that it can answer these kind of questions. So to answer your question, they can help us, kind quickly prototype.
Yeah,
but when it comes to building a solution that has, very, good structure and basis, you still need experts and you still need, all the throughout usual process of product development. So they can, speed up prototyping, but not the actual all product development process.
Yeah, I agree with that, Sara. So I'm using those LLMs, not only in Cyclia, we eventually will, but I'm mostly using in my PhD research, where my project is generating recipes, food recipes, that are targeted for multiple diseases like cancer, Alzheimer's, personalized recipes, according to each other's tastes, according to each other's diseases. And on one side, one of their main benefits, I think, is as well one of their main problems. The fact they are trained with so much data that it makes it also unpredictable sometimes whether they are going to get the answer that is the correct one. And so, for example, if you are talking about an application to be deployed in NHS or in a setting, in a health setting, or in a setting where people's lives are dependent, it's very important to have some deterministic way of having an idea which output are we going to get with this input. And it's very abstract when we use these LLMs, whether we can be suggested something completely nonsense. So in my own case, what I'm using is I'm using very more deterministic tools to, for example, put different ingredients together in the recipes, and then using these LLMs to put them these separate ingredient lists as a comprehensive text.
Yeah, I see that being really helpful, but you really need to consider all the ethical issues, especially in the healthcare domain. Just taking a guess that LLMs will be trained using American white men or a really biased domain, and if you try to use it to generalize to something, and people won't know, they have this really accessible tool. If you don't have these AI advisors to help them take a better look and see, well, this is biased for this specific scenario, please be careful. And it's the same thing in any other domains, like the cycle lanes. If you use these safety perception models, if you ask ChatGPT, how safe do you think this is for cyclists? It will be biased towards cyclists in America or something. If you go to India, people have very different traffic rules and cultural.
No, and it happened, for example, with major routing apps, Strava, City Mappers, someone having an accident because they are telling this is the best route. They have an accident, and then the company behind the app is just in court because they say that's the best route, and now look at me, I'm injured. So it's very important as well, especially with lives of people are involved. And again, there's always a way that the company has to try to avoid those situations by making the user accepting all terms and conditions, but it's always tricky.
Yeah, and the same thing can happen in healthcare. Like if you make a mistake, really, who is liable for that? Is it the developer who built the algorithm? Is it the training data? The doctor who used it, etc. Have you faced similar challenges?
Well, I personally didn't, but I remember a doctor, like when ChatGPT just got out, I remember a doctor actually trying to test it in real life, in real perspective. He's an ER doctor.
Huh.
So a woman got in that she was actually pregnant. And she got in and she had some kind of complication. They didn't understand what was happening, and he wanted to use the AI to help him, quickly brainstorm so they can quickly, quick decision making, right? So after talking with ChatGPT and all of that, he figured out that ChatGPT missed out on a huge hint, right? That actually, for him as a doctor expert, helped him, figure out what was happening with the pregnant woman and actually save her. If he followed what ChatGPT was actually suggesting, the woman would have been dead by now.
Well, that's good to hear that he didn't follow. Okay, we have some questions from the audience already. Cesar Bedoya is asking, what do you think is the best way to experiment with initiatives using AI and data company, considering the poor data governance that has the company? I didn't understand the last part. I don't know if Cesar, are you still there in the audience? The last part says that.
I'm here.
Yeah, can you rephrase it, please?
Inside the company. That is a problem to initiative that use that data.
No. Yeah, so would you like to start? Do you want him to rephrase it?
So what is exactly the issue?
But how do you think that is the best way to start an initiative using AI and data from a specific company inside a company?
I see. So I have a friend. She works at a public company. It's a governmental public company. So, and I remember she wanted to use their data, obviously with their consent, to actually, kind of develop. I remember, it's something very related to
The crowdsource.
Yes, the issue with Rose, but it was more like the cars, not the actual bicycles. So they were very accelerated, but the problem is that at first, I'm going to be honest, hopefully she doesn't kill me. She did it secretly. No one knew about it. And then, when I think she was talking with one of her colleagues, she pitched the idea of what she was doing. They were super excited and everyone wanted in. But only after they saw, the value, the success in it. So, yeah, right now, she is like, why don't we, open source it and make it available? They're like, no, not really. Just keep it under wraps. So the problem is the best way to convince a human being is to show them either how they're going to get profit out of whatever you're working on, or to show them the value. Like if they value quality, if there's something they value, try to figure out how to stick what you want to do with that value, so they can see the relationship and give you funding or vouch for it, or make it as an initiative. But prototype behind the scenes. Try not to use the data or steal it, but prototype behind the scenes.
Yeah, and just to add something before you answer that, I think there are two main frameworks that people talk about in AI, which is model-centric and data-centric. I think in order to be successful and to go from lab and research to real life, it should be business-centric. So you should really be talking with the business guys, asking them what they need, not what models they need, but what do they need to improve their business. And then AI is like an enabler to support that.
Yeah, exactly. And putting into context with Saclia, we have the perception poll, right? Where the question that we ask is, between two images, which one is safer, looks safer? This question can be any question, right? Between two images or two words, whatever, which ones looks more appealing, which ones look in any way that you'd like to extract that information. So that's a way of generalizing it for other means of mobility, like for example, like reduced mobility, Paulo.
Yeah.
And on the top of it, there is, but it's important as well, then the sequence going from the building the prototype, then the beta testing, and then putting in production. And people from the company will always be slightly biased in the sense that I imagine that they want the product to work. So it's important not keeping only that data training within the company, but it's a good starting point. It's easy in terms of like time and cost, but it's important to expand a little bit then the testing outside of the circle.
Yeah, thank you for your question, Cesar. The next question is from Maria Loureiro about do you think big tech companies like Google, which you know pretty well, have a responsibility of contributing to AI for good? And do you know of any initiatives where they already do it? And also to include Luís, do you think maybe you could use some of this knowledge, some of this data that they could potentially give you in order to create a better product?
I mean, we use Google Street View images, so that's one of the best ways that a big company like Google can, in a very important way and probably very easy way for Google's perspective, but very important for a smaller startup like Cycle AI to decisively contribute for our evolution.
Mm-hmm.
So Google actually contributes in many different ways, especially when it comes to AI for good. They're building, I remember they built an actual model for a person that actually, he's a huge player. I believe he was a football player, and he lost the capability to talk or anything after an accident. So they were like helping him, develop a way to communicate with his family using, an application. And obviously he was just, the use case, so they can streamline it for other people. And they do this like for several AI for good matters. For example, like right now you do know we're mostly there is still a lot of people who are analphabet, so they can't read, they can write, and they developed Google Lens, which can actually now read what is written, out loud and all of that. Apart from that, they fund in every possible way. Like for example, I have a PhD fellowship from them, and they care about projects that are, have impact in your local community. Not really, if it's worldwide, that'll be perfect. But if it starts with your local community, they will definitely, fund you over someone who is going to solve a business use case. So yes, they help with funding. They have Google for AI startups, right? Programs. So yes, they have
Google Cloud
ways.
credits.
Yeah.
Okay, one question here about the professionalization of the AI for good landscape. I guess this is more for Sara, but please, of course, you can contribute. How do you think we can change the landscape of AI for good in order to have full-time AI specialists?
What do you mean, Sara?
So people that get paid to do AI for good more frequently. So how to make AI for good a business?
It's I'm not sure if you checked that out, but there is a lot of actual startups in the AI for good space, right? Although it's very few, but they are emerging and it's full force. So the trick is to find, how can we make profit from this AI for good, issues? For example, if you're building something that can detect cancer, you can actually either sell it to, doctors or like private clinics, right? So try to build something that is useful for someone, and they will definitely, it will definitely become a business. If you have a business, you have money, you can pay people.
Yeah, and
I think, Sarah, one of them, because if you are talking about AI for good, I think that automatically implies that you are not always going to be charging people to use your service or your product, right? And one way of monetizing whatever you have, like a software or hardware, mostly software and apps in general, is by monetizing not by asking users directly to pay for it, but by having multiple people using it. And for example, in case of Cycle AI, we are thinking about using a freemium model that we provide the core features, the safety features as for free, and then AI for good. But then like a set of premium features that are just going to make the experience more comfortable, asking for a small price. And another thing that we are considering is in the map that we have in the app, advertising specific shops for repairing your bicycle, for example, that we know that are trustable, and that in that case is as well a possible source. And like these, we are still focused in social impact without asking directly people to pay, but we are basically converting number of users in revenue for the company. But the thing is that to get to the point of having a significant amount of users in any app, in any social media, for example, it requires a big investment. And that can be either done by angel investors, can be done by municipalities as well. So I think government plays a big role.